McDonald's is the largest restaurant chain in the world, worth over $220 billion, more than KFC, Burger King, Pizza Hut, Domino's, and Subway combined. Every minute, it sells 4,500 burgers, and around 69 million customers visit McDonald's every day across the world. But what if I told you that McDonald's was actually a stolen business from two brothers? What started as a single drive-in restaurant from two brothers soon turned into a global fast food empire, all because of a determined milkshake machine salesman. And from the outside, McDonald's looks like a normal burger selling company, but from the inside, they are in a completely different industry, unrelated to food at all. However, there is no doubt that McDonald's is an inspiring underdog success story. But behind this success, there is a lot of drama, betrayals, and untold secrets. Welcome to the crazy and controversial story of McDonald's. The McDonald brothers, Richard and Morris, also known as Mac, were born in Manchester, New Hampshire. They came from a humble family. Their father worked at a local shoe factory, while their mother was a housewife who took care of the home and raised Richard and Mac. Since their father didn't earn much, so their mother had to carefully manage the household on a tight budget. Still, the family lived a simple, peaceful life and was happy with whatever they had. But in 1929, the Great Depression changed everything. Their father lost his job, and with it, the family lost their only source of income. However, to support their family, Richard and Mac decided to move to California for work. They had always loved Hollywood movies, so they thought working in the film industry would be a great idea. Luckily, both brothers found jobs moving film equipment and handling props on movie sets. They worked hard and sent some of their earnings home to help their family. At the same time, they spent as little as possible and saved every extra dollar, hoping to buy a theater one day. For a while, they worked together in the studio, doing different jobs like moving scenery, setting up lights, and many more. After 5 years of hard work, Richard and Mac saved enough money to buy the cheapest theater they could. They ended up purchasing a struggling movie theater in Glendora. Unfortunately, the theater was in poor condition and didn't make much money, making it tough for them to survive. After 5 years of trying to make it successful, the brothers decided to walk away from the movie business and find something that could make them more money. Meanwhile, the McDonald brothers were extremely careful with their money. After their theater failed, they had very little money left, so they spent every penny wisely. Sometimes to survive, they eat just one meal a day, usually a simple hot dog from a nearby stand. But one day, while eating, Richard noticed the stand was always crowded with customers, and it seemed like one of the few businesses in town that was actually making money. At the same time, the McDonald brothers also noticed that drive-in restaurants were becoming more popular. They saw an opportunity and figured there was money to be made in the food business. But they had one big problem: they had no experience in the food business. Eventually, they found a solution. They hired a chef to teach them basics, and with that, McDonald's barbecue was born. Originally, they started by selling hot dogs. It wasn't easy. Learning to grill food, take orders, and manage a team all at once was a real challenge. But after 2 tough years of running their restaurant, they were ready to move on to something bigger. By 1939, they decided to move to a bigger and better location in San Bernardino, a busy railroad town. But their savings was not enough, so they secured a $5,000 loan from the bank. With that, they opened their new restaurant in an octagonal building on a parking lot, with more space, a prime location, and more items on the menu. On weekends, the new McDonald's barbecue was packed with over 100 cars at a time. The brothers managed a team of 20 waitresses while hurrying to make milkshakes and cook hot dogs, sandwiches, and burgers. Business was booming, and they were making money fast. By the end of 1948, the brothers had made enough money to live in a large house. With this, their competitors were completely shocked. Richard and Mac, both brothers, had the most successful restaurant in town. However, from the outside, it looked like a huge success, but behind the scenes, managing restaurant was overwhelming. Firstly, running the restaurant was really stressful and took up all their time. Second, finding good cooks was difficult and too expensive. And lastly, both brothers noticed that even though their parking lot was always full, their business wasn't making as much money as they expected. From the outside, it seemed like the McDonald brothers were simply quitting, but in reality, they were secretly working on a new plan to change their restaurant completely. The McDonald brothers went back to basics and noticed that most of their sales came from hamburgers. So, without wasting any time, they decided to simplify things. They cut down the menu and kept only the basics: burgers, fries, and drinks. The McDonald brothers became obsessed with making their burger process faster. They even drew their restaurant's layout on their home tennis court and acted out different ways to speed things up. They timed every step, adjusted their movements, and kept testing until they created the most efficient system possible. For example, instead of waitresses serving food to cars, customers would now order at a window. In the kitchen, each worker had just one job: grilling burgers, frying potatoes, wrapping food, or taking orders. This meant they didn't need skilled chefs to make great food, and since the menu was so simple, they could prepare food in advance, cutting wait times to just 15 seconds. They called it the Speedy Service System, a new way to make food fast, simple, and more efficient than ever before. However, when they reopened McDonald's, the new Speedy Service System confused some customers. Many still waited in their cars, expecting a waiter to take their order. The idea of walking up to the counter was completely new, but once customers saw how fast they could get their food, just 15 seconds, they loved it. The McDonald brothers had changed the fast food game, and news of their new system spread quickly. Surprisingly, Richard and Mac didn't keep their methods a secret. They openly shared their process and even gave free kitchen tours to anyone who wanted to learn. But both brothers didn't know that this single mistake would later cost them a lot. It's time to introduce the important person of this story, Ray Kroc. He was born in Oak Park, Illinois in 1902. Despite growing up in a modest household, Ray was always ambitious. While his mother gave piano lessons at home to earn extra money, he was already dreaming big. In his free time, he practiced the piano a lot and became really good at it from a young age. Ray never cared much for school, and by the time he was 15, he decided to quit. His parents couldn't stop him from dropping out. He was sure he could make a living as a piano player, so he started playing on the streets, earning whatever little money he could. When Ray was 20, he fell in love with a girl named Ethel and decided to marry her. But his parents didn't agree with his decision, so he went against their wishes and married her anyway. He knew he had to take care of his wife, and that meant finding a stable job. For the first time in his life, Ray decided to get a stable job. He started working at the Lily Cup Company, selling paper cups. During the day, he traveled around looking for customers, and at night, he played piano at a radio station. By the time he got home, he was completely tired. However, his wife is not happy with his work because all day he is doing work and not spending enough time with her. Ray's life was tough and he was always stressed about money. Playing the piano brought in some cash, but it was not enough to support his family. So, he decided to focus on becoming a better salesman, and it turned out to be the right decision. Around this time, prohibition had started and hotels and bars could no longer sell liquor. To keep their businesses running, they started selling ice cream instead. This meant they needed a lot of paper cups, and Ray saw a great chance to make money. He didn't just sell cups, he also helped businesses sell more ice cream. This way they made more money and he sold more cups. But it didn't last long. In October 1929, the stock market crashed and the US economy suddenly collapsed. Ray's boss at Lily Cup called him into his office and told him he'd have to work on less salary from now. And Ray said he can't accept it. But as his boss made it clear there was no other option, Ray finally gave up and quit on the spot. When his wife found out, she was furious. Ray and his family were already struggling with money, so he had no choice but to go back to his old job and accept whatever salary they offered. However, after that, Ray and his relationship with his boss became worse. When Ray returned to his job, he met a customer who had created a new milkshake machine called the multi-mixer. This machine could make 5 milkshakes at the same time. After trying one of the thick, creamy shakes, Ray saw a golden opportunity. If Lily Cup also sold the multi-mixer, it would naturally boost paper cup sales since both products worked perfectly together. When Ray told his boss about his idea, his boss just laughed and said, "A paper cup company shouldn't be selling milkshake machines." This time, Ray had enough. He quit again and started his own business selling the multi-mixer. But the economy was still struggling and Ray had a family to feed. He needed to find a way to make money fast. Despite many challenges, Ray worked 14-hour days and met with potential clients late into the night. After 1 year, his hard work paid off. With a great product and unstoppable dedication, he traveled across the country, selling thousands of multi-mixers each year and earning a good living. But just as his life was getting better, another problem showed up. America entered into World War II. During this time, factories stopped making multi-mixers and focused on supplying the army instead. This was Ray's worst nightmare. To survive, he started to sell many other products, but once war ended, things finally started to improve. However, around this time, Ray noticed something unusual in his sales records. A small restaurant in a remote town, 60 miles east of LA, had ordered 6 multi-mixers. It might have been a mistake. Most restaurants barely needed one. Ray was so curious that called the restaurant for confirmation, but he was even more surprised when they told him they actually needed 8, not 6. Ray had to see this place with his own eyes. Without waiting any longer, he got in his car and drove straight to San Bernardino, California. When Ray arrived, it was actually Richard and Mac's McDonald's restaurant. At first, it looked like just another small restaurant, but within no time, the place quickly became crowded, with around 150 people showing up. When Ray paid 15 cents for a hamburger and got it almost immediately, he was shocked. The place was very clean, the burger tasted great, new customers kept coming in, and the restaurant was a family-friendly environment. He had never seen anything like it before. He introduced himself to the McDonald brothers and they explained how everything worked. They even gave him a tour of the kitchen. Ray was impressed by their speedy service system and finally understood why they needed 8 multi-mixers. This was the fastest and most well-organized restaurant he had ever seen. And from that moment, Ray knew he had found something that could change everything. Ray asked the brothers, "You're doing everything right. Your food is great, the place is clean, service is fast, and customers love it. So why are you only in one location? Why don't you open more restaurants?" The brothers said they had already tried opening more franchise locations in several areas but struggled to maintain quality standards across locations. At first, the McDonald brothers weren't interested in franchising. They enjoyed their simple life running just one store and didn't want to take the extra stress. But after some discussion, Ray convinced them to give it a try. He told the brothers, "If you find someone who can help with franchising, just call me." When Ray returned home, he excitedly told his wife about the restaurant and the speedy service system. He even wanted to invest and be a part of it. But his wife wasn't excited. She was happy with their life and didn't want to take a big risk on something unsure. For the next few days, Ray couldn't sleep properly. He kept thinking about how big McDonald's could be. When he sold a multi-mixer, it was used for 10 to 12 years by the client, but McDonald's sold thousands of hamburgers every single day. He knew he had to find a way to get involved in this. Ray ignored his wife and went ahead, calling the McDonald brothers to ask if they had found a franchising agent yet. They hadn't. So Ray asked, "Well, what about me?" At first, both brothers were surprised by Ray's suggestion, but soon they became excited and started talking about the idea with great interest. They eventually decided to work with Ray. In 1955, Ray was 52 years old when he started the franchising contract with the McDonald brothers. He had diabetes and early signs of arthritis. He had lost his gallbladder and most of his thyroid gland in previous surgeries. Despite all this, he was convinced that the best was yet to come. He still worked with the same energy and excitement he had when he was just 20. After making a deal with the McDonald brothers to help them franchise, Ray was determined to open a McDonald's in every corner of America. To make this happen, he founded McDonald's System Incorporated, a separate company from the original restaurant run by the McDonald brothers. The contract with the McDonald brothers said that Ray's job was to look for new places to open McDonald's stores and find people to run them. Ray would then train them on how to use the speedy service system and keep repeating this process to open more stores across the country. The contract also said that if Ray wanted to make any changes to the store's design or adjust the speedy service system, he had to get written approval signed by McDonald's brothers. Now, for every new McDonald's restaurant Ray opened, he got $950 up front, and the store operator paid him 1.9% of their earnings. But Ray wanted more. He asked the brothers to raise it to 2%. The McDonald brothers refused. They said, "If you tell a franchise owner you're taking 2%, they'll think twice." While 1.9% sounds smaller, so they'll agree more easily. However, out of that 1.9%, more than a quarter would go to the McDonald brothers as a royalty payment. This meant Ray was only getting about 1.4% of the money each McDonald's store made. At first, Ray was excited about the partnership, but later he began to feel he had gotten a bad deal. his relationship with the McDonald brothers would turn out to be much worse than he had ever imagined. It all started when Ray found a great location for his first store near his office in Des Plaines, Illinois, and also found a reliable operator to run it. The McDonald brothers gave Ray a new design featuring 2 golden arches for the store, but the design didn't include a basement, which was essential for the store to work properly. Both Richard and Mac agreed that Ray should build the basement, but they refused to sign anything, even though the contract clearly required it. Since the basement was necessary, Ray decided to go ahead and build it anyway. However, this meant he was breaking the contract, leaving the brothers with the option to sue him at any time. Once the store opened, the golden arches quickly became a local attraction. Ray made it a point to arrive every morning to ensure everything was ready. After that, he would drive to his sales company, which he still owned, and return in the evening to clean up any cups or wrappers in the parking lot. Although it wasn't part of his job, Ray took it upon himself to maintain the quality, service, and cleanliness of the restaurant. In just a few months, the McDonald's in Illinois became even more impressive than the original one run by the McDonald brothers. However, Ray's company, McDonald's System Incorporated, only received $950 for it, plus 1.4% of the store's revenue. While the store's operator was making a lot of money, Ray himself was barely earning anything, despite doing more work than both the brothers and the franchise owner combined. But very soon, one person would walk into McDonald's business and turn everything upside down. Ray wasn't happy with the money he was getting, but things started to pay off in another way. The store was so impressive that Harry Sunborn, the vice president of a large ice cream chain called Tasty Freeze, decided to leave his prestigious job and join Ray. At that time, Tasty Freeze was one of the biggest franchises in the country. Ray knew that Harry had a lot of experience in the food industry and understood the franchise business very well. He knew Harry could help McDonald's grow around the world. Ray wanted him badly, but the only problem was he didn't have the money to hire him. However, Ray could only offer Harry $100 a week, which was less than a quarter of what he made at Tasty Freeze. Surprisingly, Harry was so excited about joining McDonald's that he agreed to the offer. Harry's role was to handle the finances of McDonald's System Incorporated, including securing loans and finding ways to make the company profitable. With his experience from Tasty Freeze, Ray made him the CEO in 1959. This allowed Ray to focus on opening as many stores as possible without having to worry about the financial details. In their first year working together, Ray and Harry signed up 18 franchises, 9 of which were in California. While it was easy to find new operators there, managing them from such a long distance turned out to be very hard. The first few operators didn't fully understand the speedy service system like Ray did. They started changing the products, procedures, and even raised the prices. This made it hard to keep the quality the same and to make sure each McDonald's was running in the same way. Seeing this early failure, Ray decided it was better to focus on expanding closer to home, but they learned some important lessons that would shape McDonald's in the future. First, they realized the importance of setting a minimum standard for quality. They would let operators try new things, but they could never compromise on 3 key things: quality, service, and cleanliness. Second, they learned that the best operators for McDonald's were young, driven entrepreneurs, people who were eager to work hard, not just owners looking for passive income. Lastly, Ray realized that they couldn't build an empire from just a 1.4% service fee. With each McDonald's store making around $250,000 a year, McDonald's System Incorporated only earned about $3,500 per store annually. They needed to find a better way to make more money. By the end of 1956, Ray realized McDonald's was struggling with competition, and it was all because of the McDonald brothers. They had invented a great speedy service system, but they never protected it. They always allowed others to enter the kitchen and see their system, which led to many competitors. As a result, the food was no longer unique to McDonald's. Ray was opening new McDonald's locations across the country, but at the same time, other similar franchises like Burger Chef and Burger King were also opening, using the same speedy system as McDonald's. But it was Ray and Harry who came up with a genius plan and outsmarted all of them. At that time, the most common way to franchise was territorial franchising, which meant selling the right to run restaurants in a big area. By selling these large contracts, franchises made a lot of money up front before a single restaurant even opened. This also meant they didn't have to rely on the success of the restaurants to make a profit. At first, it seemed like a good plan, but there was a problem. The people running the franchisee and the people selling the franchises didn't always think the same way. So, Ray did things differently. Operators had to show their first store was successful before opening more. It was a slower process, but it made sure every McDonald's stayed successful and kept its quality high. While other traditional franchisors made most of their money by selling supplies to their franchises, things like kitchen equipment, cooking tools, and even the restaurant signs, they made quick profits by charging higher prices for these supplies, which made them more focused on selling items than actually helping their franchisees succeed. Ray decided not to sell supplies to his franchisees because that would turn them into customers rather than partners. Since Ray's company only earned money from the 1.4% service fee based on each store's revenue, it was his job to make his franchisees as successful as possible. This was a simple but smart strategy, ensuring that McDonald's System Incorporated's goals were aligned with those of the store operators. Both Ray and the franchisees were focused on making the stores the best and most profitable, unlike other chains where the franchisors made most of their money from selling supplies. Even in person, Ray treated McDonald's operators as equal partners in his mission. Both the franchisor and franchisee shared in the success of the business, so everyone worked together to make McDonald's successful. Ray's strong belief in McDonald's future also helped. He was a great salesman, and many franchisees fully believed in his vision. But since Ray was building a system, he needed the right person to help improve it. Luckily, he already had someone in mind, a young man named Fred Turner. When Ray first met Fred, he was just 23, a young boy working at a McDonald's, flipping burgers. But right away, Ray saw his own energy and passion in him. Fred was a hard worker and a great leader, so he quickly moved up in the company. Within a few years, Ray made him the vice president of operations. Of course, changing the system had gone against Ray's contract with the McDonald brothers. There were many times when Ray had the right idea, but the brothers didn't agree with him. Back then, there was an incident when cooking with gas was popular, but McDonald's franchisees were still using the old method from the McDonald brothers, electric fryers for French fries. When Ray switched to gas, he realized it was cheaper, more efficient, and made better fries, but when he told the brothers, they refused to switch. The McDonald brothers didn't like how fast Ray was moving. This frustrated Ray because they kept ignoring him and rejecting his plans even when he was right. But as McDonald's System Incorporated grew, so did Ray's problems. His operating costs kept rising and he and Harry were barely making any money. The McDonald brothers refused to change the contract, leaving Ray and Harry struggling with just a 1.4% service fee. Ray was working 80-hour weeks with unstoppable passion, while most people his age were settling into retirement. Ray was completely done with the brothers. He knew that if he wanted to make real money, he had to find a way fast. He couldn't survive much longer on just a 1.4% service fee, and Ray knew that it wasn't going to be easy. Ray was opening more and more McDonald's across America, but while his operators were making good money, his company was still struggling to turn a profit. Around this time, Harry came up with an idea that changed the McDonald's business forever, and it was Franchise Realty Corporation, a separate company from McDonald's System Incorporated. At first, Ray didn't understand why Harry wanted to get into real estate, but soon it all made sense. It could solve all their problems. Before this, McDonald's operators paid rent to whoever owned the land, but with Franchise Realty, Ray's company would buy the land and lease it to the operators. This gave Ray and Harry a huge advantage for several reasons. First, it gave them freedom from the McDonald brothers since Franchise Realty was a separate company and not part of the old contract. Second, it gave Ray and Harry more control over franchise owners. They could set rules in the lease, like keeping the store clean. If someone didn't follow, they could take back the property. Third, owning the land finally gave them a way to make good money. Instead of just rent, operators paid a fixed monthly amount or 8.5% of their sales. On top of that, they still got the 1.4% service fee, which meant even more money coming in. Plus, Franchise Realty asked operators for a security deposit to build the store. They used this money as a down payment on the land without spending anything from their own pockets. This also gave Franchise Realty valuable assets, making it easier to get loans from banks and expand even faster. It was a smart plan, but the best part was how it kept McDonald's and its franchisees working toward the same goal. Paying 8.5% of their revenue to franchise realty might seem like a lot, but it also meant Ray had even more reason to help his franchisees succeed and make big profits. The more money McDonald's operator made, the more Ray and his companies earned too. Now that they had cracked the code with real estate, Ray and Harry knew they were onto something big. By 1960, McDonald's had 228 restaurants, and little by little, they were taking ownership of the land under them. Finally, Ray was a little bit happy with McDonald's growth, especially with Harry's new real estate plan. But his happiness didn't last long, and soon his personal life fell apart. Ray's wife Ethel was frustrated with their personal life and decided to divorce him. To settle things, Ray gave her everything: the house, the car, the insurance, and $30,000 a year for life. But when it came to McDonald's, he refused to give up even a single share. Now, after his divorce, Ray was ready to focus entirely on McDonald's, but there was still one thing holding him back: the McDonald brothers. He knew the only way to get rid of them was to take them out of the business. It was true that by changing the speedy service system without their permission, Ray had broken his contract with the brothers many times. This meant they could sue him anytime. But before the brothers could do anything, Ray had a different plan in mind. He called the McDonald brothers and said he wanted to buy them out of McDonald's completely. Ray asked them to name their price and let him know when they decided. A few days later, the phone rang. When Ray heard the amount, $2.7 million, he was completely speechless. Both brothers told Ray, "We just want $1 million each after taxes. That's for everything: our name, our original store in San Bernardino, our rights, everything related to McDonald's. We've worked 7 days a week for over 30 years, and we deserve this amount." Sure, things were going well for Ray with his new real estate strategy, but $2.7 million in 1960 was nearly $29 million in today's money. Even for a growing business, that was a huge amount, but Ray knew this was his opportunity, so he said yes to the deal. Luckily, Harry had strong connections on Wall Street, which helped Ray secure the money. It meant taking on a huge debt, but Ray believed in McDonald's so much that he was sure he'd earn it all back. But at the last minute, the McDonald brothers decided to keep their original restaurant in San Bernardino. It was a dirty game. That location was a goldmine, and Ray needed the income from it. He tried everything, but they refused to change their minds. They were ready to cancel the deal if they didn't get their original store. Thankfully, in the end, they reached a deal. The brothers could keep their original store, but they had to rename it the Big M, so it was no longer linked to the McDonald's brand. However, there is another side of this story which says the brothers also wanted to keep getting their 0.5% royalty for lifetime. But Ray said if they put it in the contract, insurance companies would charge him more, so he promised to pay them from his own pocket, but only as a handshake deal, not in writing. The brothers weren't sure if they could trust Ray, but in the end, they agreed, hoping he'd keep his word. But when it was time to pay, Ray refused and never gave them a single penny. But since nothing was written down, the brothers couldn't do anything or prove the deal ever happened. Still, the story wasn't over. Ray had one last plan in mind: to destroy the McDonald's original store in San Bernardino. Ray opened a McDonald's restaurant right next to the brothers' original store just to put them out of business. It was ruthless. They weren't hurting anyone by keeping their single store, but it worked. The Big M couldn't survive with a McDonald's right next door, and the brothers' dream of holding onto their store was crushed. However, after that, Ray never looked back and kept growing and growing. Today, there's no doubt that McDonald's is the biggest fast food chain in the world, and it's also true that none of it would have been possible without Ray Kroc. It was Ray who always wanted to grow McDonald's, while the brothers just wanted a simple and peaceful life. But on January 14th, 1984, at the age of 81, Ray took his last breath in California. By then, McDonald's had already become a global empire with thousands of locations around the world. Interestingly, every year, the company has its annual Founders Day event, and they celebrate that day in honor of Ray Kroc, not the McDonald brothers. As of today, there are 40,000 McDonald's restaurants in 120 countries, and it's all because of Ray Kroc. However, if you want to watch another story like this, I'll highly recommend you watch the Gucci video. It's full of drama, fashion, and family business with full of fights. Just click the thumbnail and I'll see you there.